I'm your host, Jess Magnan, and I am here to help you translate spiritual wisdom and universal laws into a language that your subconscious mind can easily understand and act upon. So let's jump in. So, today I want to get into more of the implementation or utilization of this law of soul balance or law of reflections. And I know we've already done that to a large extent, but I just want to put this out there right now so that you don't think you've graduated from your law of reflections study. It is vast. It is complex. There are so many different components to this law, intricacies and subtleties, that I really want you to take your time. But I am going to deliver some new angles and new ways in which you can start to benefit from your understanding here. So let's start with a little bit of review. So episode 1, it was all about the physical aspect or the physical component of this law. So talking about all of the different areas of life and the different behaviors, habits, actions, tendencies, things that would be observable to a fly on the wall that can either bring you closer to soul balance or further away from. So you went through each of the 8 areas, presumably, and came up with 2 to 3 items, action items, or increase, decrease items that you could theoretically put into play pretty immediately in order to move toward balance. So things that you, like levers that you could pull fairly easily to get you closer to balance, whether that be things that you would stop doing or start doing or increase or decrease. So the physical, as much as it is a little more palpable, a little more dense and discernible, it is not always so black and white. And what I mean by this is that sometimes it can actually appear on paper that you are on top of this area, you are doing the things, you are relatively in balance. And what's actually going on is that the specific things that you are doing are generally good things, but they're not the absolute best things that would be most advantageous or beneficial to you in moving toward what we refer to as the soul path, soul pull, which I believe I mentioned in the last episode, but I know I didn't go into a lot of detail. So maybe I'll just kind of go into that right here so that you understand. Your soul path, soul pull is kind of like if you've heard of this concept of dharma, or your life's purpose, your reason for being, raison d'être, right? So from a soul perspective, we all have one. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. But so often we are maybe even like kind of close to the mark, but we're not like a bullseye precision when it comes to moving along that soul path, soul pull. We might even be like adjacent to it, but not quite recognizing it. So this reason for being, this life's purpose, this pull of the soul has to do with essentially living in your highest alignment so that all of the people and circumstances and physical matter that you come into contact with is elevated by your presence and your influence. So, an example of being in balance in a particular area, but being still off of the trail of your soul path, soul pull, could be something like you're in the right line of work, right? Like you're using your skills, but you're using them for an organization that isn't quite in line with your highest potential, or they're not able to really use you for your highest potential. Or another example might be something like physically. So you are doing Pilates, let's say, frequently, 3 times a week, and that's like feeling like the perfect amount. And then on the other days, you're doing Buddha walking, which is one of my favorite nervous system regulation, cortisol reducing practices. And then in your diet, you are doing like, let's say paleo. I'm just making this up on the fly. And while all of that is great, there's like one thing that you're eating that just isn't aligned with your body chemistry. It could be that you're eating a lot of salmon and it's doing something kind of funny to your hormones, your endocrine system. And because of that, your energy levels are just slightly off, which means that your level of creativity is slightly reduced. It's still up there, but it's not where it could be. And so there are certain opportunities and potentials and like connections that you're not seeing. You're not making these connections. You might even just find that you're not, well, you wouldn't notice this, but what could be happening is that you're not finding yourself in the right place, right time. Again, like I said, you wouldn't know that, but this is where the nuance really comes in. It's like, let's say there was less salmon and more cod. I don't know. Your energy is slightly different. You make slightly different choices, which means you end up at a dance class after dinner on a Monday night versus on the couch, or versus at a yoga class or whatever. And then you meet somebody and they say something and it spurs something in your mind, and then all of a sudden you're on this track and you're researching this thing and you're meeting these people and you get the idea. And there's also the case, there are a number of possible scenarios that I want to just kind of gloss over for now, and then I'm going to give you some examples a little bit later of how this stuff actually plays out, or has played out rather, in my own experience. And all of this, for the record, as a reminder, is going to be coming to you in a way that makes sense to me, in the way that I've come to understand it and to integrate it into my own life. So we can also have a situation in which we've got this physical side of things pretty balanced and humming along, and we could have, often will have, a hidden perception issue in an area that seems to be physically balanced, but having to do with a different kind of subcategory or subtopic. So let me think of an example here. Let's say physically you're in great shape, right? And you are eating really clean, you're not drinking, you're doing all the things that feel like they are going to be of highest value and benefit to you. but you have a belief that because your mother had breast cancer, that you are next in line. So a belief, a perception, an imbalanced perception, which is what we spoke about more in episode 2, pertaining to the physical, separate from the actions that you're doing. And what will usually happen in this example is that perception problem is actually most likely to show up in a different area of life first, before it circles back around to you actually getting breast cancer. And I'm going to break this down a little bit more because I'm sure you've noticed that this cancer stuff is pretty rampant. And where I come from, this is largely because of contagion thoughts. So just maybe write that down or put a little pin in it. This is something that I'll talk about in greater detail, likely in a future episode, but a little bit more here today. So in this example, this person, let's say it's you or it's me, is all over their physical area of life in the physical. So the physical aspect of the physical area as opposed to the emotional, energetic side of things. And this is partly motivated by the perception, the unbalanced perception around being a high match for breast cancer because mom had breast cancer. But what's so interesting is that while this perception problem is relevant and is a big piece of the puzzle, it's not the root. So in this example, and there could be a number of different root causes, this is another thing to really remember about the law of reflections. We have a large database of information about general root causes, but then anytime there's a reflection situation going on, there's also going to be hyper-specific details that will be personal to that individual in terms of what their root cause is. So for the sake of this example, let's say the root cause is actually going to be in the mental area of life, and it is having to do with anger towards a certain, I'm going to get really specific here. I wasn't going to give this much information this early on, but one of the root causes for any issue, physical issue, having to do with the female anatomy, so breasts or reproductive organs and parts, is having to do with feeling anger toward men, unresolved anger toward men, a specific man, or more of like a, again, it's an unbalanced perception about men in general. So it would be something like all men are cheaters, or all men are sexist, or what have you. So we can see how a belief system, a mindset like this could be essentially learned or passed on from a mother then down to a daughter. So that's the actual what's the word, hereditary issue being passed along. It's not actually the cancer. The cancer would be the effect. So I think you're probably starting to see how intricate this law can become. I even had to pause my my audio for a second and just like screw my head on after explaining all of that. It's sort of like a twisty maze, but it also I'm thinking that if you are here and you've listened to the last two episodes, I'm thinking that that clicked really well for you. And so I want to come full circle on this one example where that reflection might show up before the person actually ends up getting breast cancer, which is sort of like the final destination. But it doesn't have to go that far. And that's the real exciting, beautiful part of the law of reflections once you understand it and start to kind of start to live by it or look through the lens of this understanding, that you really realize how much power you do have to rewrite the story and redirect things. So where this reflection could show up for this individual, right? So let's say it's me and my mom had breast cancer. She didn't, but let's say she did, and I was expecting to get it. And we went through what the root cause could have been, right? There's not one sole root cause. It's specific to the person. But if we're going with that example, where the reflection might be showing up is somewhere like vocation. So there's this probably so deeply seated perception that men are sexist or whatever I said before, I can't even remember now, cheaters, that is affecting the dynamic with this person and her male colleagues at work. You get the picture, right? And what's cool about this is like the reflections will show up in places that we care about to get our attention. So that's what I mean when I say that it's specific to the person. So if I'm a person who doesn't care about vocation, then my reflection's not going to show up there. But if I do, then I'm going to start to see the reflection showing up there. And not only that, but it will start small. It's starting almost like a mosquito bite or something like that. And then over time, it becomes more and more kind of like high stakes as we miss it and or ignore it, sidestep it. One of the examples I really like to articulate this is like, those phases, I think we've all gone through it, where we are extra sort of clumsy when it comes to like food and even just our drinks, like we're spilling droplets of water onto, our favorite blouse. It's like a silk blouse, so you know how it leaves that spot for the rest of the day. And in the beginning, it's pretty innocent, right? Like it might start as water, but then as we ignore the reflection or we don't realize it, then the next time it's like cranberry juice, and then it becomes like grease from cooking, and then it's red wine. You see how the progression, it is gradual. So that's actually a blessing, right? It's your higher self giving you a chance, like giving you more than a chance, like chance after chance after chance after chance, like hoping that you're going to catch this. And like, had you not had this foundational understanding of how this law works, you really couldn't have caught it, right? Like sometimes we get lucky, I think, and we have these, in my world, we call them like a pity donut, where something or someone kind of comes in and happens to us, and it's like one of those moments where we get this like eureka light bulb moment. We have an epiphany, we have like a quantum leap, but we don't want to just be living for those moments and waiting for them to happen. We actually want to be making them happen. And I just want to share with you, I'm just going to sprinkle a few of the known general root causes for reflections in here so that you can start to just ponder, make the connections. This stuff seeps in slowly, but you'll start to notice that you're making more connections. You're noticing more of your creations, good and bad and weird, with this information becoming more prominent in your conscious mind. So the root cause for let's look at, let's see here, staining clothes is feeling like you're ruining things that you care about or value. So if this were happening to me, I would be starting from here, and then I would be starting to look through the 8 different areas of my life and asking myself, like, okay, where am I really feeling like that? Where am I maybe doing that? And then that would be the jumping off point for flipping the reflection, which would be how I head off the next level of the reflection. So the way that reflections work is they go from level 1 all the way up to a level 10. So spoiler alert, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but we don't ever like stop having reflections, and we actually don't want to, because it is how we expand and uncover more and make refinements. But we do aspire to keep the reflections around a level 3, 4. Lower, obviously, even better, but it's to be expected, even for more advanced students of this work, to be having reflections up to about a level 3, 4, and just kind of like, they're sort of like on the back burner, right? Like they're able to be decoded and flipped relatively quickly, but they're coming in relatively regular or consistent. And I just want to say, there have been so many times for me where I'm like, I would pay to unknow this information so that I can just go back to being blissfully unaware and just ignore all these reflections, because I'll tell you something, and if you're already here listening, it's probably too late, but you're not alone. I'm here for you. I'm here for this. Once you have grasped how this works, you will be likely to experience some overwhelm as you come to accept that everything is a reflection. Now, you do not have to address every single reflection. One of my mentors used to say, I have bigger fish to fry. So, guaranteed right now, me, someone who is teaching this stuff, there are reflections that I am full on not aware of, consciously at least, my subconscious knows, not dealing with, right? Or sort of sidestepping. And it's like I said in, I think it was the first episode, like, it's not going to kill me, right? And some of these things do end up working themselves out just as a kind of a byproduct or extension of my work in other areas, on other sort of bigger fish reflections. And I know for me, learning about this stuff was both affirming and felt like it was filling in a lot of the missing pieces, which it was, and simultaneously overwhelming, like I said, because what I came to realize, for better or worse, it's better, is that manifestation and spiritual growth, spiritual expansion, awakening, enlightenment, elevating our consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is not a one and done. There was a period of time for me in my spiritual quest, and there are still a lot of teachers who explain things in this overly simplified manner that sounds really good, right? Just, I'm trying to think of a good example, like just relax and receive, this kind of thing. Or hand it over to the universe, to God, whatever you believe in. And unfortunately, that is not the vibe. It's not the full story. So, Source or God, I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure in terms of what the big guy can actually do on your behalf is no more than, I think, 30% of the like heavy lifting, so to speak, on the way to anything that you want. So when you pray for a miracle, you pray for something, it's not actually, okay, let me say it slightly differently. It would be possible. Source or God has the power to do anything, but because of the way that free will actually works, it's very similar to the way that our creator fields work in the physical human experience, and how we live in what we refer to as an inside out universe. So if I don't have the let's say musculature or coding for something internally, which is to say my beliefs, my emotions, my perceptions, then I cannot attract or manifest it externally. And it's the same thing with Source. Source cannot deliver something to you that you have a discordant belief about. So if you believe that you are doomed to get breast cancer, let's just run with this example, Source can't take it away from you. Source can't save you from it. Source can't give you that miracle. So it's a co-creation, and Source does love to co-create with you, don't get me wrong. It's just that you've got to make yourself a match to the thing that you want. And part of like the trick of this whole thing is that we all have arrived, and it was gradual over thousands of years, really, at a place of perceiving that we are limited, that we are kind of like walking around with our hands tied as victims of circumstance, letting the world have its way with us, that we are powerless. And so the prerequisite to both manifesting in the physical and receiving miracles in the metaphysical is first correcting this belief, this distorted belief that we are limited or powerless, and becoming rooted to the knowing, the absolute knowing of what and who we truly are, which is each of us. We are, remember I said this, I think last episode, mini gods in training, or mini sources. That doesn't flow off the tongue very nicely. In training. So this is the piece that we've been led away from, even by some of the quote unquote highest spiritual teachers and teachings. Because what Source really wants, what your soul came here for, was to take radical responsibility for this creation, this masterpiece. Remember the painter's palette with the 8 colors? That is your life. Not to feel empowered and limitless over here in the financial area, but totally hopeless in your romantic relationships or your physical beauty, health, vitality. You get the idea. It has to be all or nothing. We're not like part-time creators, but this is sort of where we've gotten stuck, where it's like, yeah, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And it either is or it isn't. And that takes a lot of, well, one, courage, willingness. If you're here, you've got it. But also patience and tenacity and faith, right? Like if you've been around manifesting and, read the spiritual books, you've probably heard this saying that if you are going to manifest something, which is to say create something, you must be able to have full faith that that thing is coming without any physical proof or evidence to let you know, right? Like blind faith. It takes courage. It takes being brave and willing to blaze your own path and to become and create your own proof. Like you become the proof of what it is that you're pursuing. There's no blueprint. No one has gone before you, because you, on your soul path, soul pull, came for this very specific and highly special and unique pursuit. And one of the biggest, most common issues or distortions that I see, and I've seen it in myself, I've struggled with it in myself, is perceiving that I'm not special. I'm not that special. Okay, I'm maybe a little special, but I'm not like 1 in 7 billion special. Well, now I know. Now I know that actually, yes, I am. And actually, yes, so are you. And that's actually a really nice segue into a little bit more of this nuance when it comes to perceptions about ourselves, or we could say self-image, distortions, right? Self-concept wounds, or another way that I refer to it often is holes in our creator field or gaps in our creator field. When it comes to these wounds, these gaps, these holes, they can exist without us being aware of them across all 8 areas of life under various sort of like subheadings. Let me give you a new example. So let's say I have a belief about myself that, let's use social anxiety. I have social anxiety. And that belief trips me up or causes all kinds of problems whenever I'm supposed to go to a function with my partner and his friend group, or a group that is, say, of a certain number of people. But whenever I'm with my group of like 7 or 8 girlfriends, I'm totally fine, right? Or even a real example from my life, like whenever I'm teaching a yoga class in front of like 20 or 30 people, or maybe even more than that, or when I used to waitress, I might be serving a large party of good-looking people or whatever it is, I'm totally fine. And yet in this one particular scenario, whether it's a certain number of people, if it's over a certain number, like I kind of go into this like, wanting to bolt and do the Irish exit thing, or I just kind of like lose my charisma. It's like I fumble my words. I don't know what to say. All of a sudden I'm in like fight or flight. Well, in order to solve this reflection, I'm going to have to do some digging around, and I'm going to have to get really specific to pinpoint what is the belief or the perception that's at the root of this effect or this reflection that's going on for me in these very specific situations. And here's how it could work. Again, this is just one way that it could work. It could be something like I have this deeply seated belief, distorted belief about my value or my potential when it comes to the financial area of life. Now, I know as I'm saying this, you're like, okay, wait, how is that correlated? And this is where the subconscious mind and how it functions really comes into play. So subconscious is like a repository for experience, right? And it's a meaning-making machine, but it can get pretty glitchy. And I talk about this a lot when I'm more orienting from the RRT perspective, although it really lends itself nicely to this work as well. But essentially what can happen is, I'll give you an example, actually more from the RRT side of things. It could be something as simple as you go somewhere and you meet this new person at a gathering, and this person happens to have like a very similar intonation in their voice as a teacher that you had in elementary school, and you don't consciously recognize it, but as you hear this person's voice for the first time, they're totally genuine, they're totally sweet, they're welcoming, they're engaging, like lovely, lovely person, and all you can think is, I don't like them. And that would be your subconscious kind of red flagging this person based on an experience back in grade 1 or 2 or whatever it was. So now you have to get in there and start kind of rooting around. And this is where trained intuition comes in really handy, because What intuition essentially does, and I haven't spoken about this too much, but you will hear me talk about it lots on this podcast. I'm just getting all of the foundational pieces in place beforehand. But what intuition does is it allows us to bypass a lot of the analysis and the trial and error and go right to often the root cause without the guesswork, because a lot of the time the way the unconscious mind works, it's not logical, so you're not necessarily even guaranteed to find a root cause through a logical approach. And this is why oftentimes even the most well-intentioned modalities and therapies miss the mark, because they are working with logic, the analytical mind, as opposed to the intuition, which has the precision and power to go right to the cause. So I'll just leave that there for now. But back to this example about the social anxiety and the specific scenarios and the money beliefs. Like, how does that all tie in? And again, just emphasizing that this is just one way for one specific person in one specific reflection. It could be something similar to what I described, where there's been an association made. So a past experience having to do with being, let's say, in a certain setting, like a really fancy restaurant, and not knowing like what fork you're supposed to use, and embedding this belief as a result that I am trash, or I am like a lower class or second class type of person. And then all these years later, it's like I feel so good and so confident, and I can speak freely, and I have good comedic timing and good charisma when I'm with this certain group of people. But then when I'm over in this type of a scenario, all of a sudden I get like knocked back down to this place of self-criticism and self-loathing and judgment. And what a lot of people would do is like, okay, those aren't my people. Like, I'll just put up a boundary. I'll just like not put myself in those situations. And while I do support, having the agency to recognize like, this is not for me, I don't want to put myself in this situation. On the other side, devil's advocate, I will point out that there's always an opportunity when we are triggered to become more powerful, more capable of fully 100% creating and controlling our reality. So I've spoken about this quite a bit in the work that I do, and had to acknowledge it within myself, that if my approach to overcoming something or healing from something is simply to avoid it, I'm not finished. And well, as I was saying in, I think it was the last episode, it is helpful for a time to step away from something, distance yourself from something. It's not the end of the line. It's not the final destination when it comes to healing. It is a stepping stone. Okay, so I'm feeling like this is going to really land. Like, it's really starting to sink in for you, but I want to seal it in with a story So, one of my first experiences with getting scientifically precise, intuitive insight from my mentor, who I believe, who I know to be possibly, quite possibly, the most highly trained intuitive in a physical body right now. Not to be traumatic, but I've been on this quest for a long time and quite discerning. I ask a lot of questions, I poke a lot of holes, and this guy for me is the holy grail and then some. I've come to the realization that I won't have another human teacher. All of the learning and expansion now will be sort of like self guided through intuition, and sort of him as well, right? Like him being sort of the guide, and me being the, it's like a student master type of relationship, but there won't be like a teacher after him, if that makes sense. So when I had my first intuitive call or intuitive read from him, there was an opportunity to fill out, make some notes and basically fill out, similar to what I do, what my wishes were, like what I wanted to address and resolve on the call. And I had written down like three to maybe it was even more like five different things having to do with like self-image and like family, like traumatic things that had happened to me, like big emotional things, unhealed wounds and that sort of thing in various areas of life. And at the very, very bottom of the list, I put like a little asterisk and I said, and after all of these, like my next area that I would want to look at and do some work around is the financial. Thinking that like it's pretty low on the list. And we get on the call and he's got this like little smirk on his face and he's like, okay, so I read through your list, and he said something about how like you're clearly very self-aware and you've been, eyes wide open looking at all of these aspects of your creator field, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, so we're going to focus solely on financial today. And I was like, pardon? Like it caught me so off guard, because it wasn't obvious to me. And the correlation was like, I was not even picking up on it consciously. I think intuitively I had the thought one or more times around, essentially like putting a glass ceiling above my own head in terms of what I was capable of in the financial area, but it was never something that I was really like caring that much about pursuing. Like I'm the type of person that can be pretty happy and live like a simple life. Some of you, if you know me well, you're probably laughing like, oh yeah, your grass-fed beef and all your supplements and this and that. But it's not like I'm someone who's looking to have this mansion and travel all the time and drive a crazy car. I wouldn't hate it, but it just wasn't ever something that drove me to do what I do in my life. Anyway, all that to say, he really spun me right around and made perfect sense of why this was exactly the area that I needed to hone in on and shift my beliefs around. So I did, and I am. Stay tuned for future episodes on abundance and the financial area of life from a spiritual perspective. It's really freaking interesting. And I plan on teaching a lot more about this area over the next couple of years. But what I want to leave you with today, one thing that I wanted to touch on just before I leave you with a little exercise that you can do, powerful exercise that you can do, simple but very potent. I want to just go over, I think I did touch on this in a previous episode, the concept of the golden rule as it pertains to the law of reflection. So we have the golden rule. We know that it is all about treating others the way that we would like to be treated. And while that is a thing and useful and valuable, a good thing, there are sort of two, I think I did talk about this, but repetition is the mother of all understanding and integration anyway. So we've got kind of two tiers or two levels. Level one is the golden rule as we know it, treat others the way that we wish to be treated. So we can have reflections in the level one or first tier. So that would look like I am neglecting a particular friend who needs my help and I'm just like ghosting or making excuses or whatever, and then my partner is doing that to me. So we would call that in this world a lower frequency reflection. Okay, so if you are looking into a reflection, you'll want to look in both places. So tier one is like, where am I kind of doing that to someone else, that thing that I feel is being done to me, or the thing that I feel is happening to me, where might I be doing that to someone else? So check yourself with the golden rule. But then as your frequency goes up, and I'm going to go ahead and assume if you're listening to this, more of your reflections are going to be in the second tier, but don't forget about tier one, because I've done that before and realized like, oh yeah, it's totally possible to drop into a lower frequency in certain areas, in certain situations. No one is immune. Okay. So tier two, you know, by now it is going to be about you. So if I'm feeling some kind of way about what's been going on at work, I'm going to ask myself, like, where am I making myself feel like that? So that's kind of your jumping off point for starting to deal with reflections. But even before that, what I want to get you doing on the regular, it's not always going to be easy or fun, but super powerful practice is to start to simply call out the reflections. So let's say you spill soup on your white blouse, right? I did that. That's what you're going to say. Or you hit all the red lights, like I was talking about. I think it was a little video that I made. I did that. You, what's another good one? You trip over something in front of a group of people. I did that. Like literally anything that happens to you and you're tempted to say like, I can't believe this is happening to me. I did that. So you're taking responsibility for everything that happens. You get in a fight with your partner because they did something, you're going to still say, I did that. So yes, take responsibility when something good happens. You can even say, I manifested that. I like the word created as opposed to manifested. So I created this traffic jam. And you didn't create the traffic jam, but you created yourself being in the traffic jam, right? I created this, what could be another good one? Like somebody ditching me, somebody ghosting me. That's a big one that shows up a lot in relationships. That is a tough pill to swallow, but I promise you, even just the act of starting to say or even think, you don't have to say it out loud, I created this, what happens is your higher self is going to start to kind of back up and give you some room, because the whole slew of reflections or the increasingly intensified reflection you're having is because higher self has been trying to get your attention. And so if you say, if you affirm, if you recognize, I created this, higher self's going like, okay, back up, let's give her or him a chance to now start to sort of zoom out and see the bigger picture and correct this issue, this reflection, start to shift it or flip it, right? So get in the habit of just calling out, creating everything. And if you are stuck, if you have specific reflections, specific questions that you are just dying to know the root cause of, you are in luck. We are having a Q&A, a live Q&A call over Zoom within the next 2 weeks. So I haven't set the date time just yet, but what you want to do, if you're not already, is jump into my email list. That's where I'll be announcing the date and time as well as sharing the Zoom link. So the way that it will work is there will be an opportunity to pre-submit a question. So even if you can't make the live, the recording will be made available to you and your questions will be answered. So all you've got to do is sign up, and what I would recommend right away is just go and check your spam. If you don't see the welcome email right away, sometimes that stuff just gets automatically diverted, so just mark it as not spam so that you'll see my emails, and within the next 7 to 10 days you'll see an email announcing the time and date and all of that detail that you'll need in order to either submit a question or get on the call or both. And as always, thank you for letting me be in your ear for now. Wow, we're almost at an hour. When I sat down today, I thought this will be a short one, but if you know me, I can get on a roll sometimes. I like to yap, and I definitely recommend listening to this one a couple of times as well as the others, but this one, I think there was a lot more intricacy here that will absorb more quickly and more fully with having listened to episode 1 and 2 at least one time. So take your time with this stuff. Like I was saying in episode 1 or 2, I can't remember, the foundational understandings and having that real connection and coherence with the information is absolutely life-changing. And when it comes to being able to really milk these ideas, these teachings, these laws for all that they're worth. So if there's someone in your life who you think would benefit from this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would share. And like I always say, I believe in you.